When you master your emotions, your decisions, your direction, you become unshakable. You become the kind of person who doesn't react to pressure, doesn't fold under fear, and doesn't need applause to feel worthy. Self-control is not about restriction. It's about responsibility. It's the quiet discipline of leading yourself when no one is watching, choosing what's right over what's easy, and showing up consistently for your values, not your emotions. Most people think leadership is about influencing others. But the truth is, if you can't influence yourself first, if you can't command your own actions, habits, and mindset, you're not leading, you're drifting. Self-leadership begins with self-control because before you can lead a team, a family, or a mission, you have to lead your own impulses. Think about how much power people lose daily just because they're reactive. A comment on social media ruins their mood. A difficult conversation triggers anger. A bit of discomfort pushes them to quit. That's not freedom, that's being controlled by external forces. When you haven't trained yourself to pause, to reflect, to respond with intention, you become a puppet of your surroundings. And yet we often admire those who seem calm under pressure, who speak with clarity in chaos, who walk away instead of fight. What we're admiring is self-control. That's the foundation of self-respect. That's leadership. Self-control is the muscle that allows you to choose long-term purpose over short-term emotion. It helps you resist the temptation to quit just because something feels uncomfortable. It guides you away from the need to prove yourself in every conversation because you already know who you are, and it teaches you to say no, not just to others, but to your own destructive habits. That internal governance, that ability to act from your principles instead of your pain is what makes a leader trustworthy. People don't follow noise, they follow calm conviction. The challenge is most people wait for the world to calm down before they calm themselves. They wait for someone to inspire them or for the environment to be perfect before they take action. But leaders don't wait. They create alignment inside themselves, and from that alignment comes clarity. From that clarity comes action, and from that action comes change. All of it begins with self-control, the ability to sit with your emotions, process them, and still choose the next best step. Self-control doesn't mean suppressing how you feel. It means mastering how you express it. Anger isn't wrong, fear isn't weak, but letting those emotions control your choices, that's when you lose direction. Leaders feel deeply, but they don't allow those feelings to run the show. They listen, they learn, and then they lead from strength, not from reaction. Self-control is the compass that keeps your decisions aligned with your values, not your moods. Every time you show up with discipline instead of excuses, you're practicing self-leadership. Every time you stay focused when distractions call for you, you're strengthening your inner authority. Every time you choose to respond instead of react, you're becoming the person others trust to stay grounded in chaos. And that kind of leadership is rare, not because it's impossible, but because it's earned. It's built in the small daily moments where you do the hard thing, not for applause, but because you made a commitment to yourself. The greatest battles are the ones you fight within. The moments when your ego wants to speak, but your wisdom chooses silence. The moments when your fears tell you to run, but your values tell you to stay. The moments when comfort whispers quit, but your purpose whispers continue. In those moments, the one in charge isn't the loudest thought, it's the most disciplined one. Self-control is the difference between a life of reaction and a life of intention. You don't need more motivation, you need more self-mastery. Because when you control yourself, your thoughts, your actions, your focus, no one else can control you. You're no longer a victim of the world. You become a leader in it. And when others see that, they don't just listen to you, they follow you. Not because you demanded it, but because you demonstrated it. That's what leadership really is, influence built from example, not ego. So before you lead anyone else, master leading yourself. Train your mind to focus, your tongue to speak with purpose, and your energy to move with direction. Because when you lead yourself with discipline and clarity, you become the kind of person who doesn't just change your life, you inspire others to change theirs. Reactivity makes you predictable, and what is predictable becomes easy to manipulate. When you respond without thinking, when you let anger, fear, or ego drive your actions, you give others power over you. You may think you're standing up for yourself, but in reality, you're just dancing to someone else's tune. The moment you react without reflection, you hand over control. That's not strength, that's vulnerability disguised as resistance. People who know how to trigger you can control you. All they need is the right comment, the right moment, and suddenly your peace is gone, your judgment is clouded, and you're no longer operating from wisdom. You're operating from impulse. And that impulse is almost always short-sighted. It doesn't think about consequences. It doesn't calculate the cost. It just demands release. But what feels like release in the moment often becomes regret later on. When you're reactive, you're emotionally exposed. You wear your triggers on your sleeve, and that makes you easy to manipulate. Whether it's in business, relationships, or leadership, people will test you. They'll poke at your insecurities, they'll challenge your ego, and if you haven't done the internal work, you'll break. You'll lash out, shut down, or make decisions that are rooted in fear, not principle. That is the vulnerability of reactivity. You become a tool for other people's agendas. True strength lies in restraint. It lies in being able to feel anger and not explode, to feel fear and not retreat, to feel insulted and still choose your response. That control doesn't make you weak, it makes you powerful. Because when you can observe your emotions without becoming your emotions, you become unshakable. You stop reacting and you start responding. Responses are rooted in awareness. They're guided by long-term thinking, not momentary emotion. Look around. The world rewards those who stay calm under pressure. It listens to those who don't shout over noise but speak with clarity through it. It trusts those who can navigate conflict without becoming chaotic themselves. That kind of composure isn't natural for most, it's trained. It's earned through years of self-reflection, emotional discipline, and personal growth. But once it's built, it becomes your armor. Not a shield to block the world, but a foundation that keeps you standing when the world shakes. Reactivity is emotional immaturity. It's the inability to pause, to question, to understand before acting. It assumes the worst. It feeds on assumption. It thrives on urgency. And it almost always makes things worse. How many arguments have been escalated because someone didn't take a breath before speaking? How many relationships have been damaged because of a text sent in anger? How many opportunities have been missed because someone couldn't control their pride? These are not mistakes, they're patterns of reaction that can be unlearned. You don't become powerful by dominating others. You become powerful by not being dominated by yourself. By not being pulled into every drama, every criticism, every negative emotion that tries to hijack your focus. The more reactive you are, the more fragile you become because you're constantly depending on external peace to feel internal peace. But when you build internal control, you stop depending on circumstances. You create your own calm. Reactivity is the enemy of leadership. You cannot guide others if you're constantly triggered. You cannot solve problems if your emotions take over your logic. You cannot inspire respect if you're emotionally inconsistent. People follow those who are steady, not those who are explosive. They trust those who can remain composed when everything is falling apart. That trust is what makes a leader effective, and that effectiveness begins with emotional control. Being less reactive doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough to act with wisdom. It means you've stopped living at the mercy of your emotions and started choosing your actions based on values. It means your behavior is not dictated by other people's behavior. That's real maturity. That's personal power. If you want to become mentally strong, emotionally grounded, and respected by others, train yourself to pause. Learn to breathe through discomfort. Learn to wait before speaking. Learn to step back before stepping in. These small habits will build a foundation of emotional resilience that no one can shake. They'll help you respond with intention instead of regret. In the end, it's not the loudest person who wins. It's the one who remains clear, consistent, and controlled when everyone else is reacting. That's the person who leads. That's the person who grows. And that's the person who becomes unbreakable in a reactive world. Discipline is often misunderstood. People see it as confinement, as a set of rigid rules that limit pleasure and spontaneity. But real discipline is not about restriction. It's about liberation. It's the structure that gives you freedom, the habits that give you power, and the consistency that gives you peace. Discipline doesn't cage you. It sets you free from chaos, from excuses, and from regret. Without discipline, your life is ruled by impulse. You do what feels good in the moment, but later pay the price in stress, guilt, and missed opportunities. Without discipline, emotions dictate your decisions. Distractions pull you in every direction. You become a slave to comfort, a victim of inconsistency, and eventually, a person who always feels behind. That's not freedom. That's a life of reaction, always running from consequences instead of running toward purpose. But when you build discipline, you take control. You stop living by default and start living by design. You wake up with intention. You set priorities and follow through. You learn to delay gratification, not because you don't want pleasure, but because you want purpose more. And the result, you gain something most people never experience: true autonomy, the ability to choose your actions based on your goals, not your moods. Discipline gives you time back. When you consistently show up, you stop wasting time on excuses and overthinking. You stop scrambling at the last minute. You become efficient, prepared, and present. That structure creates space for creativity, rest, and clarity. It opens up your life. It doesn't restrict it. Think of athletes, artists, or leaders who are at the top of their field. Every one of them has mastered discipline. They train when no one's watching. They work when others quit. They stay committed even on the days they feel unmotivated. That's not a coincidence. That's not luck. That's daily choices aligned with a vision. And that vision pulls them forward through pain, through failure, through doubt, because they have built the habit of showing up, whether they feel like it or not. And here's the truth: motivation will fade, inspiration comes and goes, but discipline stays. Discipline doesn't wait to feel ready, it acts anyway. That's why it works, and that's why people who are disciplined create results, while others just create plans. It's not about being better than anyone else, it's about being better than your excuses, day after day, until progress becomes your new normal. Discipline also builds confidence, not the kind that's loud or arrogant, but the kind that comes from knowing you can count on yourself. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, your self-respect grows. Every time you resist the easy option and choose the right one, your strength grows. And over time, you stop doubting yourself, not because you've never failed, but because you've learned how to keep going. That's the quiet power of discipline. It's not flashy, but it's unshakable. And in a world that's addicted to speed, convenience, and shortcuts, discipline is a radical act. It's the decision to slow down, to do it right, to be patient with the process. It's saying no to the temptation of quick wins so you can build something that lasts. That kind of patience, that kind of commitment, that's what builds mastery, that's what builds character. Freedom is not the absence of responsibility, it's the ability to carry responsibility without being crushed by it. It's being in control of your time, your habits, your direction, and discipline is how you get there. It's the path that leads you away from chaos and toward clarity. So if you want freedom, freedom from stress, from regret, from limitations, build discipline. Wake up early, keep your word, do the work. Don't wait for motivation, create momentum. Let your habits carry you when your emotions can't. Because the more you practice discipline, the more you expand your freedom, not just in your schedule, but in your life. There's no shortcut to the life you want, but there is a path, and it's paved with small, consistent, disciplined actions. That path might be hard, but it's worth it. Because in the end, the person who lives with discipline lives with power. Power over distraction, power over doubt, power over fear. That's real freedom, the kind no one can take from you. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. The world responds not to your intentions, but to your energy, your actions, your consistency, and your character. It's easy to desire success, respect, loyalty, peace, and love, but the real question is, do you embody those things? Do you live in a way that makes them gravitate toward you? People are always watching, not in a judgmental way, but in a silent, observational way. They watch how you treat others, how you respond under pressure, how you show up when things get hard. They don't follow your words, they follow your presence. And your presence is built by your habits, your mindset, and your standards. You don't need to scream for attention when you carry quiet strength. You don't need to beg for loyalty when you live with integrity. That's the power of embodiment. It speaks before you do. We live in a time where everyone is projecting something, but the strongest energy is not in the projection, it's in the foundation. You can't fake being grounded. You can't fake inner peace. You can't fake discipline. These qualities are felt, not shown. And when you've genuinely built them, the right people and opportunities start aligning with you, not because you chase them, but because you match them. If you want people to respect you, start respecting yourself. That means respecting your time, your boundaries, your health, and your word. If you want loyalty, become someone who is loyal even when it's inconvenient. If you want deep relationships, stop hiding behind performance and start showing up with authenticity. What you are inside reflects in what you attract on the outside. Embodying something means becoming it, not talking about it, not posting about it, not wishing for it. It means practicing it until it becomes who you are. You want confidence, keep promises to yourself until you trust your own voice. You want peace, let go of toxic attachments and stop fighting battles that aren't yours. You want growth, embrace discomfort daily and stop waiting for the perfect conditions. Attraction is alignment. It's not magic, it's not luck, it's cause and effect. You attract chaos when you live in confusion. You attract insecurity when you feed self-doubt. You attract inconsistency when you act out of desperation. But the moment you shift inward and become clear, intentional, and authentic, everything changes, because people can feel when you've done the work. They can feel when you walk with truth, and they can feel when your confidence comes from within, not from approval. This isn't about perfection, it's about alignment. It's about building habits, principles, and values that reflect the kind of life you want to live. You can't demand from others what you haven't cultivated in yourself. If you want to be around high-value people, become one. If you want to lead others, lead yourself first. That's how trust is earned, through example, not entitlement. Every day you're sending a signal by how you carry yourself. That signal says, this is who I am. This is what I tolerate. This is how I think. This is what I believe I deserve. And that signal pulls things toward you, both good and bad. If the energy around you is full of stress, drama, or instability, it's worth asking, what am I embodying that's attracting this? And what can I shift internally to change it? Transformation isn't about changing everything overnight. It's about gradually becoming more of what you truly value. It's showing up each day as a person who represents what they hope to receive. You want purpose? Be intentional with your time. You want love? Be patient and kind, even when it's hard. You want success? Be the kind of person who does the work when no one's watching. When you embody something consistently, you no longer have to seek it out. You draw it in. You become a magnet, not through force, but through frequency. That's the law of alignment. You don't need everyone to see you. You just need to be seen by the ones who resonate with the truth you live by. So the challenge is this: stop looking outward for what you haven't yet built inward. Focus less on the image and more on the substance. Grow into the person you want to attract. Lead with values, not vanity. Show up with consistency, not chaos. And most of all, live in a way that reflects what you claim to want. Because in the end, you don't get what you wish for, you get what you are. The need for validation is one of the quietest chains people carry. It's not always loud. It doesn't always look desperate. Sometimes it hides behind achievement, behind good intentions, even behind confidence. But it's there, driving decisions, shaping behavior, and stealing peace. When your worth is tied to how others respond to you, you're never truly free. You're performing for approval. You're editing your truth to fit someone else's comfort. And that's a prison, not a life. Validation is addictive because it feels like love. When someone claps for you, likes your post, agrees with your opinion, it hits a part of the brain that says, you matter. And that's what every human being wants, isn't it? To matter. But the problem begins when that feeling becomes your source instead of your bonus. Because what the world gives you, it can also take away. And when your self-worth rises and falls based on others' reactions, you're no longer grounded. You're fragile. Silencing the need for validation doesn't mean you stop caring about people. It means you stop needing their approval to move forward. It means your values become louder than their opinions. Your mission becomes stronger than their feedback, and your truth becomes more stable than their moods. That kind of inner strength isn't built by accident. It's built through repeated moments of choosing self-respect over external praise. People lose themselves trying to be liked. They adjust their personality, hide their struggles, say yes when they want to say no, all because they're terrified of being misunderstood or rejected. But the cost of constant validation is authenticity. You end up living a version of yourself that's acceptable to others, but disconnected from your own soul. And no amount of applause can fill the emptiness that comes from abandoning who you really are. One of the greatest shifts in life is when you no longer need permission to be yourself. When you stop asking, will they like this, and start asking, is this true to me? That's when clarity starts to grow. That's when confidence becomes real. And that's when you realize most of the limits in your life were never about your ability, they were about your fear of being judged. There's a difference between feedback and validation. Feedback is helpful, it sharpens, it guides, but validation is a craving, it's rooted in insecurity. And the moment you need it, you start bending yourself to get it. You play it safe, say what others want to hear, and build your identity around being accepted. But what's the point of being accepted if it's not the real you that's being accepted? You don't need to be validated to be valuable. You were valuable the moment you showed up in this world. You were enough before the compliments, and you'll still be enough when they stop. When you finally stop performing for the crowd, something incredible happens. You discover peace, real peace, the kind that doesn't depend on who notices you or who agrees with you, the kind that says, I know who I am, even if no one else does. This silence of validation doesn't mean arrogance. It means stability. It means you've rooted your identity in something deeper than public opinion. You've chosen to live by your standards, your values, your vision, even when it's not popular, even when it's not applauded. And that integrity creates something rare, trust in yourself. Most people don't trust themselves because they've spent too long trying to be what others want. But the more you listen to yourself and honor your truth, the more your inner voice becomes clear. You stop second guessing. You stop waiting for consensus. You move, you speak, you build, not because others say yes, but because you already did. The irony is, the more you stop chasing validation, the more respect you gain. People are drawn to those who are unapologetically real, not perfect real. The ones who can lead without a crowd, stand without applause, and speak without performance. That's influence. That's leadership. And that starts with choosing to be whole, rather than approved. So give yourself permission to live unfiltered. Say the hard thing. Take the bold step. Do the work that fulfills you, even if no one claps, because the applause you truly need is your own. The moment you stop needing validation, you start building a life that actually matters to you. And that kind of life can't be shaken. The greatest form of power is self-leadership. When you lead yourself, no one else can own you. Not opinions, not pressure, not rejection, not approval. You become someone who doesn't need to be rescued, reminded, or redirected. You walk with a sense of responsibility that no one can give you and no one can take away. That's the essence of personal freedom, knowing that your direction, your discipline, and your decisions are in your own hands. Too many people live waiting for permission. Permission to start, permission to believe in themselves, permission to take up space, and in that waiting, they become dependent. Dependent on praise, dependent on validation, dependent on others to pull them forward when they lose motivation. But real leadership, the kind that's unshakable, starts when you stop waiting and start leading yourself from within. You are either led by purpose or pulled by pressure. The world will always try to own you. It will try to tell you who you should be, how you should think, what's acceptable, and what's not. And if you haven't built your own compass, you'll follow someone else's map. You'll live according to their definition of success, their fears, their expectations. That's not leadership. That's survival in someone else's story. Self-leadership is the discipline to act in alignment with your values, even when it's inconvenient. It's the integrity to choose what's right over what's popular. It's the awareness to know what you need and the courage to walk away from anything that compromises your peace. You don't get that from books or podcasts alone. You get that by showing up for yourself day after day, when no one's watching, when no one's clapping, when quitting would be easier. When you lead yourself, you're no longer controlled by circumstances. Life will test you, people will disappoint you, plans will fall apart. But if you've learned how to lead yourself through discomfort, you won't be broken by it. You'll adapt, you'll stay grounded, you'll keep moving, not because it's easy, but because you've trained yourself to keep going. That's the power of leading from within. You no longer need ideal conditions to make progress. No one can manipulate a person who knows their values. No one can control a person who doesn't crave approval. No one can own a person who knows where they're going. But getting to that point requires work. It requires honest self-reflection, painful growth, and repeated discipline. It's not glamorous. It's not always fun, but it's necessary if you want to build a life that's truly your own. When you can sit in silence and be at peace with yourself, you've already won a battle most people are still fighting. When you can hold a boundary without guilt, take a step without reassurance, and stay grounded without applause, you've become your own foundation. That's not ego, that's evolution. And it's rare, because most people are still looking outside for something they haven't built inside. The people who rise in life are not the ones with the most talent or luck. They're the ones who lead themselves relentlessly. They build habits even when no one notices. They speak the truth even when it's uncomfortable. They pursue their goals without needing constant validation.
They hold themselves accountable because they understand that self-leadership isn't optional, it's essential. There is a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can depend on yourself. Not because you're perfect, but because you're consistent. Not because you always know what to do, but because you're committed to figuring it out. That kind of inner strength makes you immovable in a world that's constantly shifting. It gives you clarity when others are confused. It gives you direction when others are lost. You don't need to control others when you can control yourself. You don't need to prove yourself when you know who you are. And you don't need to follow the crowd when you've built your own path. That's what happens when you lead yourself. You rise above manipulation, distraction, and noise. You walk with purpose, think with clarity, and live with conviction. So stop outsourcing your power. Stop waiting to be told what you're capable of. Step into responsibility. Own your time. Own your growth. Own your choices. Because when you lead yourself, you don't just change your life. You set a new standard for what's possible. You become untouchable, not because you're unreachable, but because you're rooted. And no one can own what's already claimed from within.